Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode. And thank you for all being here. Thank you for watching and listening and being such an engaged audience. I hope that you have been enjoying the content so far. I am going to be diving into the follow-on topic from the last episode. The last episode was how to turn integration into actual 3D results, how to turn your inner shifts into shifts in your 3D external world. And also speaking about the biggest blocks that not just you, but every human being will come up against in that process. So if you haven't watched that or listened to that, then head over to that episode and have a listen because it will really help you. Today, I'm going to be diving into the next piece of the process is when you have come out of that integration or you're beginning to come out of that integration and you realize that your 3D world no longer fits. You have shifted so much internally and you suddenly realize that a lot of aspects of your life, relationship, work, friendships, patterns, old ways of behaving, even in your business, ways that you used to communicate, messaging that you used, and you just realize this doesn't fit anymore. What do I do? What do I do? How do you deal with that when you have outgrown your 3D reality? And this is such an important topic to be diving into because so many people, if you are really doing the deep inner work and you are shifting the context of your sense of self and the magnet of your identity, then you are going to hit this point. And if you do, it's good. The whole point of it is that it's good, but it won't feel good. And so today's episode is walking you through that moment when you realize that your 3D reality doesn't fit anymore and you have outgrown it. And what do you do so that you don't go backwards, so that you don't go back to the old way, that you can actually start paving a new 3D reality that is in alignment with the shift that has taken place for you. And I'm also going to be diving in to the three main things that you're going to come up against in this process. The first one is that moment when you realize it doesn't fit. And what is likely going to be flooding your system, how the thoughts in your mind will start thinking, the roadblocks that you are likely to hit experientially, mentally, conceptually, that happens when you start realizing that your world doesn't align anymore with where you're standing now and who you're being now. The second thing I'm going to dive into in this video is that really strong magnetic pull to go back to the old way, because facing the consequences of you actually making these changes in your 3D world feels too confronting. So I'm going to talk about what actually is taking place in that moment in your brain, in your body-mind system, so that you can recognize those roadblocks and then be able to have a conscious choice on how to either move forwards or stay back. That moment of choosing the uncomfortable unknown and the ramifications of change, stepping into the complete unknown and letting go of the known, and also the pull of going back to what is known, which means that you're likely to betray yourself in the process. So that's the second piece that I want to dive into. And then the third piece is, why is it that we as human beings find this kind of big change so frightening? Why is it that we resist it so much? therefore we don't do it. And then we find ourselves looking at all these other people that are making these big changes in their life, and we feel jealous and we feel like they're doing it but we're not, and that can build resentment, and that can build shame and low self-worth, and even more evidence to beat ourselves back and pull ourselves back into the old patterns and the old behaviors and the old ways of being. So I want to dive into what it is that you are confronting, not just in yourself, but why it's so hard for the human mind, for the human design, to allow ourselves to step into the unknown realm, the unknown field, where real change is possible, where a new possibility is possible. So those are the three things that I'm going to dive into today. So just to set the table so that you can hear whether this is you. When you come out of the big ego death and you have been integrating deeply and you've gone through the dark night of the soul, and you come out the other side and you feel a significant shift. You literally feel this experience of like being an unfamiliar version of yourself, like you don't even recognize your own self. It feels so unfamiliar. It feels like you're being out of character, because you are. You are literally, your way of being is now being led by a new wiring that you have rewired in your integration phase. So quite literally, a new wiring has taken place in your neural pathways and your nervous system, so that you are starting to experience yourself in unfamiliar ways that are out of character. The character that you have always known yourself and thought you were, that was given by your brain, mind, and your nervous system. You are now experiencing yourself out of that character, and it can feel really unfamiliar. Sometimes people experience a kind of a lostness. I don't even know who I am anymore. And that can pull you into confusion. Now, just to teach you what actually is confusion, what's taking place in the body-mind system when we are experiencing confusion. Confusion is when we really are in the unknown, but the mind thinks we should know. And so we're actually experiencing not knowing, but the mind is like fighting and grappling and trying to grasp onto what is this? How do we know this? So there's this internal battle that takes place of being in the unknown, but then the mind grasping around trying to find what we know. And that can create like a freezing experience in the system. And then we feel confused, and it's really hard to make clear, direct decisions and have clarity when we're stuck and lost in confusion. So when you are experiencing confusion, the way to come out of confusion is really just to let yourself not know. Don't even try to grasp onto what you know. You let yourself not know. You are in the not knowing. Don't even try to know. Just be in the not knowing, and then there will be no confusion. And that freezing and internal battle can release. So a lot of people experience feeling lost, being pulled into confusion, maybe even ashamed, because if you have a pattern of feeling shame when you don't know all the answers and you don't know where you are and you're not in control, those old feelings of shame can come up. And so really what's taking place is that your memory of yourself, remember, our self, our false self, or our identity, or our me, is only an image. It's a self-image in the human mind, shaped and given by everything in the memory bank, which is our past. if we went to look inside your mind, if I were to open up your brain, would I find a little you in there? No, nobody has. And some people have tried. There is no you in there. There's no little me in there. The only me that we refer to is the one that appears to us as a self-image given by everything in the memory bank, the records of the past in the mind. And so when you're in this unfamiliarness, this lostness, this out of characterness, it's like I can hardly recognize myself. It's because the memory of yourself has not yet caught up with the new wiring of where you're standing now and who you're being now. So that's the first thing that's really important for you to know. That when you're in this unknownness, this unfamiliarness, this out of character experience, that's good. That means that you have quite literally shifted the paradigm from where you're standing and you're relating to your sense of self. And the memory in your memory bank hasn't quite caught up yet with where you're actually standing and seeing and listening from. And so it's going to take a little while for the new normal to settle as normal. So the unfamiliar will become the new familiar. And so that's the first really important distinction to get, is that if you're feeling a struggle in the unfamiliarness, it's because your memory hasn't caught up yet with where you're now standing. So, the solution is to let yourself really lean in to the unfamiliar. And it can feel so raw and so vulnerable and so tender. And that in itself can be scary. It can feel like, how can you possibly show up in your life from such a raw, tender place? But that experience of rawness and being exposed and tenderness is actually a sign that you have shed another layer of a mask and you're becoming more authentic. And so tread gently. Don't go back into the cave and hide. Start treading gently. Think of it like when a child or a baby starts learning to walk. It really doesn't know how to walk, but it has a very strong pull to learn, to move forwards. And so in order to learn how to walk, the baby needs to get up and take a few steps and fall down, and then get up and take a few steps and fall down. And it's a very tender, vulnerable process. Now, you're not going to scream at the baby for not getting it straight away, would you? And if you did, it would be very ineffective. Now, think of yourself in exactly the same place. That raw, tender, vulnerable, exposed feeling. I remember being in a program once, long time ago, must be about 25 years ago, when I was a participant. And I remember I started speaking in such an honest, truth-telling way, which was very unfamiliar for me because I had been so used to being very protected and very armored, and very self-conscious all the time about what people were thinking of me and what I was thinking of me. And I remember the truth coming out in such an honest, unfiltered, unsuppressed way, and how exposed I felt. And the exposure was just so uncomfortable. I hated it. It felt like something was wrong. It felt bad. And I remember the facilitator saying to me, that feeling of exposed that you're feeling right now, that's a sign that you're becoming more honest. That's a sign that you're becoming more authentic. And I was like, wow. I only felt it as bad, awful. Go back to the protection, go back to the armor. It was such a pivotal moment for me to start learning that what is new and healing and actually more authentic doesn't feel good at first. It feels tender and raw and like someone has removed the top layer of your chest, and because you are literally no longer hiding like you were before. And the hiding was there for a reason, led by your survival to protect you, but you don't want to survive anymore. You want to start living. So this tender vulnerability is a sign that you are coming more to life. You're literally coming back to life again. So it's a good thing. So tread gently. Think of yourself like a newborn baby learning to walk. Don't use this moment as a moment to go back to the armor, to the mask, to the protection, to the survival. This is the moment to learn how to start living more than you were before. Okay, so that's the first thing that I wanted to cover. The second thing is this very strong pull to go back. So you start, not only do you feel tender and raw and vulnerable and in the unfamiliar and the unknown, but you start to see, oh my God, my 3D world doesn't fit anymore. Maybe you find yourself that your relationship just feels so out of alignment and you just couldn't see that before, but you're seeing it now. Or maybe you're seeing that the job and the work that you're in just feels not at all an authentic expression of where you are now. Maybe you're seeing that your friendships don't fit or feel in alignment anymore. Maybe it's your own patterns. Maybe it's even as like what you're wearing or the relationship you have with your body or ways of behavior that you have just always been so comfortable in now don't fit. And it's quite a shocking and a confronting experience when it's like coming out of a trance that you didn't even know you were in and waking up into your own world that you didn't even know you weren't awake in fully and seeing it with new eyes. Oh my God, this marriage that I've been in for 13 years, how did I not see how out of alignment it is? This job that I've been in, this way that I've been speaking in my work, my messaging, my relationship with my friends. Oh my God, how did I not see this before? It feels so off now. And that in itself can be very triggering because suddenly you are faced with a choice. You may not realize you are being faced with a choice, but that is what's taking place. The choice is, do I change my world? Or do I go back and change myself to fit this world? And really, those are the two choices that are coming up for us. And how you'll experience it will be maybe fear, real fear of being confronted with change and and the ramifications and the consequences of having to actually put boundaries down or let people go or step out of relationships or change the way you're speaking or changing the jobs that you're in. And that takes you into the unknown, and that can bring up a lot of fear for people. Or the other option, which also doesn't feel good. I'm too frightened to change. And so the only other option is to bury myself again and go back to squeezing myself into the old pair of jeans just to make sure that I fit into whatever this box is. And I don't want to rock the boat too much. And can you hear those two options? Neither of them feel good. Neither of them feel comfortable. They're both uncomfortable. But the distinction is one way gives you the possibility of creating a new world for yourself. It is the only way that gives you the possibility of paving and creating a new pathway for yourself and your future. The other way puts you back in the box and there is no future. At least you know what's happening there, but it is not going to give you a new future. So one way brings aliveness and possibility, but you have to take the risk of stepping into the unknown. The other way brings you back to what you know and what is predominantly more comfortable, but you're going back into a box. I want to give a story. My teacher, David, used to lead maturation programs in high security prisons. And in one prison that he was walking through to go and lead the program, he was being walked through the cell blocks, and it was a very, very high security prison. I think it was in Jacksonville, in North America. And he was being walked through the cell blocks, and it was literally like in the movies, two rows of cell blocks, wall-to-wall cell blocks. And he walked past one cell, which really caught his eye, and he stopped and he asked the prison guard, tell me about that inmate that lives in that cell. And you see, the cell that caught his eye was covered in wall-to-wall Japanese Zen forest wallpaper, ceiling, walls, just completely covered in this Zen wallpaper. So, of course, it caught his attention. And he said to the prison guard, what's going on there? And the prison guard goes, oh, he's a lifer, which means that inmate was in for life, the rest of his life, no parole. And so David goes, okay, and he carries on walking, and he's really reflecting on what he just saw. And he realizes, oh, he's making the most of what he's got. But don't confuse making the most of what he's got with freedom. He's making the most of what he's got, but he's not free. Now, I tell that story because that's what we do. We'll go back into the old box, and we'll lie to ourselves that if we just put up maybe new wallpaper this time, then that will be sufficient enough for us to get by, to settle. But don't confuse that with being free of the box. We've gone back into the box. It's like going back into the cell block and trying to make it prettier and a little bit more bearable this time. That's really the threshold moment that we find ourselves in. And it is a risk, and it will feel like a risk, because the risk is we either move forwards and start having conversations with people, or letting go of jobs, or letting go of friendships, or having uncomfortable conversations with friendships or partners or relationships or bosses, or even just ourselves, which has the risk of plummeting us into the unknown and letting go of what is known. And that is a risk. The risk is to keep moving forwards into the unknown, unmanifested void. Or not take that risk and stay where we are, where we do know where we are, and we do recognize what is, but then all we get is what we already know and what's inside that box that we've just worked really hard to outgrow. And those are the only two choices. And so don't pretend we don't have to make those choices. At least be conscious that that is the choice that is being made. Do I move forwards and take the risk? Or do I move back and go back into the box? One way, though, is the unknown. And it is frightening, and it is even more vulnerable. But everything beyond what we know is beyond what is in your mind. It is beyond what is your past. It is beyond everything in the memory bank. So the only way to create anything new beyond your own past and in the memory bank is to step into the unknown. If you go back, the only thing that you get is what you already know, and you just keep going around that prison cell or the cell block, pretending that putting up the wallpaper is good enough. And so that brings me to the third piece, is why is it that we human beings find this phase so challenging? Because the human mind is designed for survival, and everything in your mind is memory. So everything that we know is given by the past, which means that anything new, not only is the only way to create new pathways of the future, but it is a direct threat to the survival mind. It's not going to feel comfortable. In fact, it's going to feel like a threat, and therefore like the possibility of a death to the mind. Which is why human beings hold on to what they know, which is why we keep staying stuck in the past. And so it's like standing on the edge of a cliff, and all you have ahead of you is the void. But that whole void feels so uncomfortable to the human mind. But everything that is of that void, the everything nothingness of that void, is the unmanifested possibility of your future. But everything behind it that you know is just like going around in the same goldfish bowl of what you know, which is given by your past. So as we step forwards and we start taking the risk, if we choose to step forwards, it can look like this. Step 1, telling myself the truth about what doesn't work anymore, what doesn't feel good anymore, and what I actually want now. That's always the first step. And most people find that so frightening, because if you dare to admit to your own self those things, then you might have to do something about it. But if you keep lying to yourself, then you are betraying your own self, and you're going to feel that. So step 1, telling yourself the truth about what no longer feels right, what no longer fits, and what you actually want. And we find that hard because we don't always know what the solution is yet. But you don't need to know what the solution is just to tell yourself the truth. So telling yourself the truth is the first step to alignment. The second step is sitting with what you have just told yourself, and then being responsible for whatever actions need to be taken to be responsible for that truth telling. Do I need to have a conversation with someone, my partner, my friends, my boss, myself? Do I need to change something? Do I need to leave something? Do I need to end something? That's the action part. When I ended my 13-year marriage, all I knew is that it was no longer working after many, many years of trying to make it work. And when I ended it without having anything waiting for me or knowing where it would take me. But I knew that I was done with that old way. Being willing to end without knowing yet what the new beginning will be, but always know every ending is a new beginning in disguise. And so being courageous enough to at least end something, and being in that void of discovering what that new beginning could be. So these are really, really powerful, important things to know, and roadblocks that you can navigate yourself through, and processes that you can take yourself through when you hit this phase. Now, we're going to move into the next episode where I'm going to actually not pivot a little bit, but deepen this teaching, where you find yourself in this position in your relationship, where you have shifted so much, but your partner hasn't. What do you do about it? How do you navigate that? So I'm going to dive into that in the next episode. So head over to the next episode or subscribe so that you can get the next episode as soon as it comes out. Okay? Don't give yourself a hard time. This process, even if it is uncomfortable, And it will be uncomfortable. The more comfortable you can be with the uncomfortable, the more empowering you are becoming, more empowered you are becoming. You are standing on the edge of creating a new possibility for yourself. Don't just make your life inside that prison cell. Step out of the prison cell and trust. All right, everybody. I hope that you found that useful. Head over to the next episode as soon as it comes out. Thank you all so much for listening and watching and engaging. I love having you here.